gather round, I have a secret for you all. Your dog is not spoiled, they're untrained. The sentiment that some dogs are just more spoiled than others is something I hear quite a lot with owners who are struggling with their dog's behaviour. Oh, my dog's so spoiled, they eat off my plate. Oh, my dog's so spoiled, they just jump around on everyone. Oh, my dog's so spoiled, they run around the park and don't listen to me. That is not a spoiled dog. That is a dog who doesn't understand the criteria and boundaries that you should be setting for them. Do we really think it's fair to ask our dogs to behave in a way that we have never taught them to? And on top of that, that we have allowed them to practice. Now, I'm not coming to this from a place of judgment, but let's redefine what we're calling spoil. To spoil something is to give them too much. And currently, the only thing you're giving your dog too much of is a lack of information on how you actually want them to behave. When we can give our dogs this information and reinforce that behavior, we create dogs who behave in a way that we want them to. If you are currently enrolled in puppy school, going to weekly classes, doing an online course in dog training, and still not seeing any improvement in your dog, I can think of a handful of reasons why. Dog training is not linear and never will be. The simple reason that we are constantly experiencing new things with our dogs. There'll be things they haven't seen before, situations you couldn't possibly rehearse for, people you haven't met, dogs they haven't encountered. Our dog's world is and should be novel and new and interesting, but not if you do not have the training in place to help them handle the situations that we're putting them in. Hi, I'm Ella, I'm a dog trainer and I'm currently studying to become a canine behaviourist. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at a couple of the reasons why your dog could still be misbehaving even though you're putting in all this time and effort, and what we can do about these undesired behaviours. The number one most important reason why your dog could still not be behaving themselves even though you're putting in all this time and effort is because they're not feeling 100% themselves. Any dog who isn't feeling 100% well is not going to behave themselves. They are not in the right mindset to be able to. I'm realising if there's any new or consistent behaviours that is a bit like different or weird for them or like not in character for them, note these down: when they're happening, where they're happening, and the frequency at which they happen. Okay, now we've got that one out of the way, let's look at some more reasons why your dog might not be behaving in the way you want them to. The second thing we should always look at is if we're meeting our dog's needs. If you have a breed of dog that has a specific job, I really encourage you to take a look at encouraging them to do that specific job. No, that doesn't mean you need to go and join a shoot if you've got a spaniel, but it does mean that we can play retrieving games in a bit more of a mindful way rather than just launching the ball. If you have a terrier, this doesn't mean you need to let them go into every hole in the ground they see, but it does mean that maybe we could take them out to walks where they can burrow under the hedgerows. I've said this so many times on this channel: when we meet our dog's needs, they are not desperate. And a dog who isn't desperate is a dog who can engage with you. If they are desperate for everything in their environment because they don't have the needs met, they're not going to listen. I have a whole video series on how to meet your dog's needs, so there's no excuses. Go. Meet your dog's needs. One of the things we quite often overlook when it comes to our dog's undesirable behaviours is looking at just how much time we are spending training them. Puppy class, dog training class, what? You're going maximum 2 hours a week, right? You might have 2-hour-long sessions a week, maybe, but how much of that time actually in class are you working with your dog? Probably not the whole hour, because you need to listen to your instructor and you need to figure out what you're doing, and then you're probably going to get it wrong at least once. They're going to come and tell you how to fix it, and then you're going to get to work your dog or your puppy. So we have 1 or 2 hours a week where you are dog training. The issue with this is that your dog is not learning for 1 or 2 hours a week. They are learning 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And yes, I'm including their sleep because lessons get solidified within sleep. So even if you train every day at home, when we actually look at our training, it is minuscule. It is tiny compared to the amount of time our dogs actually spend learning. You are always reinforcing or unreinforcing your dog all the time. They are either learning to do what you want them to do or not what you want them to do all of the time. This is why I always say, if you don't want them to do it twice, don't let them do it once. And you might be thinking, Ella, that's great and all, but like, how do I fix that? Because if my dog's constantly learning, but I'm only going to dog training class once a week and then maybe practicing at home once a week as well, how are we meant to make any consistent improvement? And this leads me on to point number 2. Consistent improvement is made when you know your criteria. Ask yourself what the rules are for your home and stick to them. Ask yourself what the rules are for your walks and stick to them. We all know what happens when we say to kids, if you don't behave, we're going home, and then you don't go home. What do they learn? You didn't really mean it. We weren't going home. Therefore, I get to keep on misbehaving. If your rule is no dogs in the kitchen, the rule needs to be no dogs in the kitchen. If your rule is when I open the front door, you don't run out, the rule is when I open this front door, you do not run out. When I open this car door, you do not run out. When I open the gate to the field, you do not run in. If your rule is when I call you, you come back to me, guess what? They're coming back to you. And if they don't listen to you the first time, you gave them the choice. If they don't listen to you the first time, you're not going to stand there repeating yourself. You're not going to give them a million more tries until they get it right. You're going to go and get them. You're going to shut that front door. You're going to shut the boot of the car. You're going to shut the gate. You're going to walk them back out of the kitchen. The reason why you're still struggling with your dog's behaviour is because you are not being consistent. What I will say is if you think your dog has made a mistake once, but you're 99.9% sure that with a little bit more guidance, they could get the answer to whatever question you're asking them right, give them another go. If they can't, that is showing us where we need to put training in. Essentially, stop giving your dog the opportunity to mess up. Stop giving them the opportunity to rehearse something undesirable. Even when we do this and then they get it right afterwards, some dogs will learn I can get it wrong to get it right. So to get it right, I have to get it wrong first, which leads to behaviours like jumping up on the counter and you always having to tell them to get down, or running out the front door and always having to call them back, or always having to just remind them with the lead and pull them back, or have it really tight so that they can't run out first. And after you've done that, that's when they won't run out the front door, or won't run out of the boot, or won't run into the field before you've opened the gate. I really do mean this. Tomorrow, the whole day with your dog, any interactions you have with them, think about how do I actually want this interaction to look, and how can I set my dog up for success so that they can do it in the way that I want them to. I have a great example of this. I was looking after a friend's dog and I have a small kitchen, so the no dogs in the kitchen rule is simply for safety. I wanted him to sit outside of the kitchen, but his kitchen at home is his relaxing space. So I knew he was going to find that hard. So what did I do? I set up a barrier. He could not come into the kitchen, and every time he sat by the barrier, he got a reward. After one day of him being in my home, he did not enter the kitchen, and I could take the barrier down. Now, this won't work that quickly for every single dog. This dog is very savvy, and he understands my criteria. He knows that he would have simply been removed from the kitchen and possibly further away from reinforcement if he had come in. Even when I was making food, or I opened the fridge, which was right by the barrier, so he could have easily taken one step and his nose would have been in the fridge, he chose not to, because just after one day of reinforcing the desired behaviour, it stuck. Which leads me directly onto my next point. The reason why you're still not having success with your dog, even though you're spending all this time, money and energy on their training, is because you're not setting yourself up for success. Stop asking your dogs questions that they cannot answer correctly. This is especially important if you are somebody who is choosing consciously not to use punishing methods. I want you to listen to this next bit very, very, very carefully. I do not ask dogs questions unless I am at least 98% sure they are going to answer me correctly. That last 2% is usually when either the dog and I have a very good repertoire, we've known each other for a while, we get each other, I know their signals and when they're not getting something and when they're going to answer incorrectly, or when we're in a safe space where no one can get harmed, they can't cause any damage, so I can give them the freedom to make mistakes. The rest of the time, I do not ask dogs questions unless I think I'm getting a right answer. Why? Because number one, I don't want them to rehearse what is reinforcing for them, but is not a desired behaviour. So I don't want them practicing something that they want to do, but I don't want them to do. This could be things like running off and chasing other dogs, jumping on the counter, going into rooms that I don't really want them in on their own because they're not safe spaces. Now, if you're choosing to punish your dogs, you kind of need them to make a mistake if you're going to use your punishing method, because they need to do something wrong for you to be able to punish them. If you're using a reinforcement-based method, you have to set your dog up for success. Otherwise, the only thing you have left is punishment. And I truly think this is the difference between people who feel like they have to use punishing methods and people who feel like, I don't ever really need to use punishing methods. If you're setting your dog up to fail and their safety depends on their success, of course, you are going to have to turn to punishment to get them to listen to you, because you would do anything to keep your dog safe. So let's just set them up for success in the first place. If you have already had a sticky recall and they haven't really listened, put them back on the lead. If you know you're having guests over and you haven't perfected them not jumping up at people, pop them on the lead, pop them in a quiet room in the house, put them in their crate until they can calm down, give them something to help regulate them, and then gradually work on their self-regulation so they don't need that tool all the time. Obviously, this is very nuanced because it depends on the situation that you're in, but I ask myself a couple of questions that help set me up for success. The first one being, what is the smallest question I could ask my dog to give them a yes? What would be the smallest thing I could ask of my dog right now in this scenario that would mean that I could tell them they had done something right? It could be looking at me or orienting to me. It could be going to their bed. It could be searching for food on the floor when I've told them they can go for it. It might be bringing me a toy or playing with me, giving me an out. It could be a hand target or a middle. We are looking for a small and easy win. This is especially important in those moments where you've gone too far. You're too deep in and you need to just figure out the situation that you're in right now. After that, the question to myself is always, how can I better set myself up for success next time? This might look like 5 minutes in the field next to the cows your dog was barking at the end of your walk when they're already a bit tired, they've listened to you, they're engaged with you, and you can work on reorienting them so they're not staring at the livestock and instead can work on looking at you. This might look like if you know that there are times when the park is quieter and you can work on your dog's recall around other dogs, doing that then. There are so many ways in which you can set yourself up for success, and for reinforcement-based dog training to work, you have to. There is no other way to do reinforcement-based dog training. Because if you keep letting your dog fail, your confidence goes down, their confidence goes down, and that's how we get into the mindset of, I have to use punishment because I want my dog to succeed. And finally, if your issue is outside of dog training class, you are going to have to train it outside of dog training class. If the issue you're having is about or in or during training class, we can work on it during a training class, right? If the issue is they get too excited beforehand and you can't even get them in the car without them squealing, we can work on that. And it's to do with training class. So we're going to have to eventually get to the point where we can drive to training class without them making those squealing noises. But if your issue is counter surfing, if your issue is reactivity with other dogs, if your issue is barking out the window, we are going to have to work on all of these things outside of training class. Eventually, one more time, eventually, we are going to have to put our dogs in the situations that they find difficult. But first, we must teach them. And if the difficult situation doesn't exist within the confines of a training class, it's going to be so much harder to actually get them to learn what the desirable behavior is. And I'm going to give you one last tidbit for free. You can work on training your dog for an hour a day, 2 hours a day, 3 minutes at a time throughout the day. None of that will matter unless you're setting them up for success in the environments that you put them in. You could train distraction cues like having food in your hand and them not eating it, or having food on the floor and them not eating it. But if you're not, number one, consistent, and number two, place that in other areas of their life, they're not going to generalize the skill. If they cannot eat when the treats are on the floor during a training session, but if you drop something from the dinner table when you're eating, they dive straight for it, they haven't generalize the skill. And this is a full circle moment where we go back to understanding that our dogs are learning 24/7. Every single time we allow the rehearsal of an undesired behavior, we are undoing our hard work. Set your dog's environment up so that they can win. Gradually, we can make it more difficult. If you start with making it difficult, you will have no choice but to punish them for the simple reason that you want to keep them safe. And those are just a couple of ways in which we can help our dogs make the right choices and live the sort of lives that we want to live with them. If you found any information in this video helpful or you have any questions, please comment below. As always, thank you for watching. Say hi to your dogs for me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!